Shabbat Shalom. So as I mentioned in my introduction to the Torah reading, we have this incident from Genesis 14, and I'll read the English translation, just to kind of set it up. And when Abram heard that his kinsman was taken captive, he led forth 318 trained men born of his household and pursued as far as Dan. He and his servants split into two camps, attacking them at night and pursuing them unto Hobah north of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods along with his kinsman Lot and his possessions, including the women and the rest of the people. Right? So when he went and he got all the captives back. All right, so I want to look at a few halakhic sources. I guess because I want to say, you know, as a friend of mine said yesterday, you know, every rabbi in the world wrote their sermon knowing that it could become obsolete by tomorrow, right? And you know, at least as of a few hours ago, the ground invasion per se had not begun, but there were more. It was the first time yesterday that Israeli troops spent overnight in Gaza. But more relevant for this topic is that the group of the relatives of the hostages sent a message demanding to meet with the defense minister. Why? Because they don't want a ground invasion of Gaza, because they believe that if there's a full-scale invasion of Gaza, their relatives are dead, right? So I want to look at what the halakhic sources say about this dilemma. Okay, so in the Shulchan Aruch, Yoreh Deah 252.3, every moment that one delays unnecessarily the ransoming of a captive, it is as if he were to shed blood. Okay, and this is from Maimonides, Hilchot Matanot Aniyim, gifts to the poor. A person who ignores the redemption of captives transgresses the negative mitzvot. You shall not harden your heart. You shall not shut your hand from your needy fellow. You shall not stand idly by the blood of your fellow. He shall not rule harshly over him in your sight. So you transgress 4 negative commandments. He also fails in the positive mitzvot. You shall surely open your hand unto him, that your brother may live with you. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, and many similar ones. There is no greater commandment, no greater mitzvah than redeeming captives. Okay, so Maimonides says, if you delay redeeming captives or ignore redeeming captives, you have violated 7 mitzvot of the Torah. Okay. So let's look at this again, Shulchan Aruch Yoreh Deah. The redeeming of captives takes precedence to sustaining the poor and clothing them. And there is no mitzvah as great as redeeming captives. Therefore, if one has designated money for any other mitzvah, they can redirect it to redeeming captives. All right, so if you have limited resources and you can either give money to the poor or use that money to ransom captives, ransoming captives takes precedence. And you have to understand that in the halakhic system, once you've sort of dedicated money to a certain thing, you can't change it, right? So if you say, I don't know, I'm gonna buy a new Torah scroll for the shul, and then somebody comes, and you said that, you made a vow, and then somebody comes along and says, we don't really need a new Torah scroll, it'd be better to buy a new HVAC system. You can't do it, because you've already dedicated that money to the Torah, right? But any meter that you dedicated money to, you can redirect that money to ransoming captives. However, we do not redeem captives for more than their worth because of tikkun olam. Okay, now we tend to think of tikkun olam as basically, I don't know, pick up the New York Times editorial page and do whatever it says there, and that's tikkun olam, right? But the halakhic sources of tikkun olam has a very different meaning. Okay, so we don't redeem captives for more than their value because of tikkun olam, so that our enemies will not dedicate themselves to kidnapping us. Right? In other words, what's the point here? If you redeem captives for more than their value, it creates an incentive to take more captives, right? So you don't want to create an incentive to take more captives, and therefore it's tikkun olam not to pay more than their value. Okay, now how do you determine their value? Go to the assessment. What? Go to the assessment. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. I mean, this is kind of, no, but you're right, okay? You look, right, Brian said go to the assessment, right? If the person were to be sold as a slave, how much would they be worth? Okay, now this is a world in which slavery exists, right? The person was to be sold as a slave, right? How much, that's probably not your area of expertise, right? But that person from, right, that person. But so we don't inflate the price of captives because it gives an incentive to take more captives. But an individual can redeem themselves if they wish. Okay, right? In other words, if your captors are asking too high a price, the community does not have to redeem you, but if you have funds, your own personal funds, and you want to do it, you may do so. And also, and this is very important, for a great scholar, we redeem them with a large amount of money. Okay, bear that in mind. Okay. However, and so then we have more from the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, he who sells himself to heathens, right? Because we have debt bondage, right? Debt teenage. He who sells himself to heathens or who borrows from them and is held by them for non-payment should be ransomed the first time and the second time, but not if it happens a third time. Mike.
Two questions that kind of this opinion. The first one is you're dealing with ransom for money, but in this case, unfortunately, the ransom is not for money.
Right. We'll get there.
The other thing that I was thinking of is the amount of being, because we are in the United States, millions for defense, but not 1 cent for prisoners.
Right.
There's that too.
Right. No, we'll get there. I mean, no, it is true that Hamas is not asking for money, right? But if you recall the Kehilat Shalom case, right? Kehilat Shalom was a soldier who was taken captive by Hamas
And you can make the argument that.
and brought into Gaza and held by them for several years. And finally, an exchange was made, and Israel released 1,000 security prisoners for Kehilat Shalom. Okay, so the analogy is there. It's not just money, right? The question is obviously, and I mean, we'll get there, right? Did that create an incentive to kidnap? Right now, remember also that Shalom was a soldier, okay? And I'm going to say something that is controversial, but nevertheless factual, okay? Because when Hamas or Islamic Jihad or Hezbollah attack soldiers, the Israeli government says that's terrorism. It's not terrorism, right? Attacking soldiers is not terrorism. Attacking civilians doesn't make it okay, doesn't make it a good thing, it doesn't make Hamas Sadiqim, but attacking soldiers is not terrorism, right? And when Kehilat Shalom, taking him captive was not an act of terrorism per se as defined in international law because he was a soldier. Okay, so anyway, right, so if somebody sells themselves to heathens in debt bondage, you redeem them twice, but not a third time. But after they die, you redeem their kids, right? If their kids were taken into bondage as well, you redeem them. But if their life is in danger, you should ransom them immediately, no matter how many times it's happened to you. Right? Okay, so, there's more laws, right? But here I want to look at what it means not to, and why not to redeem captives in more than their worth. Okay, so this is in Gittin, the 45a, the Mishnah. Captives are not redeemed for more than their actual monetary value for the betterment of the world. Tikkun Olam. One may not aid the captives in their attempt to escape for the betterment of the world. Tikkun Olam. Right? Why are you not allowed to help captives escape, and why would that be called Tikkun Olam? To not help captives escape. Yeah.
Because those who are left behind may suffer a worse fate.
Exactly, right? Those who are left behind may suffer, they may be tortured, they may be killed, they may be held in even worse conditions, right? So it's Tikkun Olam, not to help captives escape. Okay. And so the Gemara said, well, what does it mean Tikkun Olam? Is it due to the financial pressure of the community? Or is it so that they will not seize and bring additional captives, as they will see that it is not worthwhile for them to take Jews captive, right? In other words, if they know, right, I mean, this is, allegedly, right, you said, millions for defense, but not a penny for tribute, right? And the United States never deals with terrorists except when we do, right? And we never make deals to, exchange captives except when we do, right? But the thinking is, if our enemies knew, right, right, that we wouldn't, right, that there's no value, then it doesn't give them an incentive to take captives, okay? And so then there's a story about Lech Bar, who redeemed his kidnapped daughter for 13,000 gold dinars. Okay, I don't know, I mean, that's a lot, right? And, you know, normally in the Gemara, so we have a story and that proves a point, but Abai said, and who told us that he acted in accordance with the wishes of the sages? Perhaps he acted against the wishes of the sages, and one may not help the captives escape for the betterment of the world, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says for the betterment of captives, right? So, you know, we have, right? It's a great mitzvah to redeem captives, right? But we shouldn't pay too much, right? Because then that creates an incentive to take more captives, right? And I think it's clear to me that that's what Hamas had in mind, right? I mean, I don't think they expected to get 230 captives, right? But clearly, it seems to me what they had in mind is we'll take captives and we'll trade them for our people who are in Israeli jail, right? I mean, and what set that precedent? Kehilat Shalom, right? One soldier for 1,000 security prisoners, right? So, you know, and Israel has also, I mean, has released prisoners to recover bodies of people who were killed, right? Because it's a great mitzvah to make sure that people are buried properly. Okay, but now we want to look at two relatively contemporary sources. One from Rabbi Abraham Yitzhak Halevi Kilab, who wrote in 1983. Rabbi Kilab is I didn't know who he was. I came across this book, but I looked him up. He's a member of the Beit Din of Jerusalem. He teaches at Merkaz Harab, which is not really modern, but Zionist Orthodox yeshiva, and I think he's actually descended from Rav Kook. Okay, and considered an important posting, important halakhic decisor. And Rabbi Kilab says, furthermore, it seems that nowadays when terrorists declare their desire to kidnap and murder Jews, and in fact act upon these declarations without any compassion for the victims, whether men, women, or children, that releasing terrorists is actual danger and is therefore forbidden. This is true even according to those who maintain that the prohibition is based on the burden imposed on the community, since the danger here is tangible and arises immediately upon their release. Added to this is the fact that they join the forces that battle us from their countries with long-range weaponry and thus represent a threat even if they don't actually penetrate our borders. It therefore seems that it is forbidden to release terrorists and murderers in exchange for captives, not just in exchange of many for one, but even one for one because of the future danger. Right, that if you release terrorists, that right is dangerous and therefore forbidden according to halakha. Okay, but Rabbi Yuval Sherlow, who's a younger and a very important Zionist Orthodox rabbi in Israel, in his book on Jewish ethics, Redeeming Captives, says the impact on the morale of the army could be significant. Once the soldier knows that the state will not do everything it can to free him, including a willingness to release murderers in exchange for his freedom, it will diminish his motivation to fight. Right? So, in other words, essentially, Rabbi Sherlock says you know, the state has made a deal, right, with its soldiers, that if you get captured, we're gonna do everything we can to bring you back, and if you don't believe that, it's gonna hurt the morale of the army. Now, having said that, the majority of the 229 people held captive right now are not soldiers, right? But on the other hand, right, they live in what's known as the Gaza envelope, meaning, right, directly next to the Gaza border, and the state wants people living there, right? And this is the dilemma. I mean, you know, so now that whole area has been emptied out, right? Which means that even if Hamas isn't there, no, right, it's no longer Israel, right? It's Hamas stand, right? And that's not tolerable either, right? So, and I mean, I lived on the Jordanian border for 2 years, right? And, you know, we understood that if something happened, the state would protect it, right? So the problem that I have with Rabbi Kehilat is that, you know, it's the job of a rabbi to understand what the halacha is, but not necessarily how to apply it, right? In other words, if somebody comes to me and they say, you know, I have such and such a medical condition, should I still fast on Yom Kippur? Right? What am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to say the halacha is clear that if fasting endangers your health, you do not fast, right? But I am not the one who determines, based on your medical condition, whether fasting injures your health or not, right? That's for your doctor to decide. It's not for me to decide. Right? And so, you know, we don't redeem captives if that is harmful to the rest of the community. That's halacha. Okay, but who determines whether in a particular situation it's harmful or not harmful is, you know, the military and political echelons, right? Not the rabbis, right? But, you know, what I want to say is that, therefore, there's no clear-cut halachic answer. I mean, obviously, there's a requirement to try and get these captives home, right? But, you know, should protecting the country from Hamas be done even if it endangers the captive? I mean, I think that you can answer that either way, and you'd be on solid ground in terms of halacha, because you know, the question is, I mean, right? I mean, the kind of door-to-door fighting that would be necessary, right? The cost in, forget about the cost in Palestinian, right? The cost in Israeli lives would be massive if you have really door-to-door urban warfare trying to find hostages, right? I mean, you know, I mean, look, the problem is that the current leadership of Israel doesn't have a lot of trust from the public right now, right? But nevertheless, the halacha, it seems to me, allows you to go either way, because it relies on an assessment of what the military reality is on the ground, which is something that, like, none of us are really qualified to judge. Are there any questions or, yeah, Lori?
I guess the thought that pops up in my head is that if you save a life, it's as if you're saving a universe. And if if you don't negotiate for captives, you're basically destroying universes of all people who not only die, but there would be descendants.
Right, I mean, but that's exactly correct, but at the same time, right, to play devil's advocate, right, so we release X number of terrorists to get this captive back, right? And then those terrorists go on to kill more people, right? I mean, and this is the dilemma, right? This is the dilemma, yeah. No, I thought I said it. All right, so, we'll continue with the cut before Musa and, Musa Amida, 155 or 428. And then we'll say the first two blessings